Welcome to the Dad Compass podcast, your candid guide through the adventures, challenges, and growth of fatherhood. Real stories, honest conversations, and practical insights to navigate your journey. I took your dinner idea too, just so you know. I turned off the TV. Yep. And
No phones at dinner.
Questions.
Which is ironic because that's the topic we're talking about today.
Yes, it is. Well, that being the topic, man, why don't you lead us into it? Why don't you kind of tell us what this episode is and kind of tell me your definition of screen time? What is it involving?
Okay. So, that's what we're going to talk about, screen time with children, and then also as adults and the struggle of burying yourself in a phone versus parenting, which I think everybody probably goes through. Truthfully speaking, I do. I am aware of it and try to work on it. But yeah, let's talk about from a kid's perspective first. I have two different situations because when I first started parenting, I was a big advocate of no screen time at all, like very limited. And I will tell you, my ex-wife was a little bit different. So we ended up getting the older two boys like tablets, and I saw them getting buried in the tablets. And I really wanted to avoid that. Like I wanted them to go play outside, and I wanted to be creative. And to my ex-wife's credit, she's very good at like doing crafts and stuff like, with the kids, and she's always been that way. I'm not like necessarily a crafty person, but like I just wanted you to have your own imagination. Because when I was a kid, that's what I would do, right? Like we'd go play, cops and robbers or whatever it was out back, and we were using sticks as guns, and the game just continued to evolve based off of me and most likely like my cousins or my friends.
Let me ask you this.
Imaginations. Go.
Imaginations. Yes.
I was not spitting out words, and then you asked a question, but imaginations was the word I wanted.
Yes.
Okay. What's your question? Because now I just threw everything off.
No, it was perfect because the value of report, I think we had a little bit more imagination maybe, and maybe we didn't. We just didn't have all we didn't have the tablets and all the devices and stuff to keep us occupied and distracted. It's like a different way that time flies now. So my question is, how much time do you think kids on average are spending? And this is like without looking at the statistics and the facts, like what would you guess that to be?
So I think if you're talking about like on a school day, I would feel like 2 to 3 hours would have been my guess, which is still high.
Are you including TV in there?
I am.
Wow. That's like in this day and age. That's what you were thinking? Yeah,
because like you get home at 3. So for me, my kids get home between 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And they're typically in bed at 8, between 8 and 9. Obviously, my older kids, they go to bed whenever.
9:30.
As long as they can get up on time, I don't really regulate
they play
that.
The Cads right?
They what? They play that.
Yeah, the Cads right.
That's right. That's right. I know I'm underestimating just now that we're talking about it out loud, but like I guess in my head I would have assumed 2 to 3.
Gotcha. That's fair. All right. So what's the actual statistic? What do you got?
Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
You just dropped this on me, Dimitri. I just should have been more ready. All right. So
you were ready.
I was ready. I was ready-ish.
Children's turtle facts.
Ages 8 to 10 average 6 hours a day. And teenagers, so I'm assuming 13 and up, average almost 9 hours a day.
Jeez. Yeah, 11 to 14, and then 15 to 18, 7.5 hours. So
Yeah,
do you think it's accurate?
I mean, it probably is. Like, I don't see my teenagers like they get home and then they go into their room. So
Yeah.
they're on their phones or else they're watching TV. And I think that's the part of me that like when I was initially thinking, I was thinking of the kids, like the younger kids. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of interaction at the end of the day with them. Um, a lot more interaction. We do dinner, so like there's just
Mhm.
things that I guess I was thinking
They
2 to 3.
included more.
What's that?
I feel like it's maybe included more isn't the right word, but they're they're around a lot more. So
Yeah, I don't have to chase them down to hang out with them. They want to hang out with you. Your
yeah,
teenagers, you have to actually chase down and hold a gun to their head to have them to hang out with you.
doesn't really happen. Just in case.
I yeah. Uh, yeah, I was just joking about that.
That was a joke.
That was a joke.
World. I feel like you have to
But
say this in this day and age.
I also have a little bit different perspective now, and I'm not necessarily justifying the whole screen time thing, but with August being on the spectrum, he really needs that like stimulation. And
Sure.
I'll give a good example. Like I got home the other night and he was in the living room. He was actually building Legos, but he was watching TV, and I don't even know what he was
Hmm.
watching. It was trash. All the stuff that kids watch is trash to me. But
Sure.
um, I was like, hey, since you're building Legos, I'm gonna play on the Xbox. And so he was totally fine with it. It was all good. But the
Yeah.
minute that the TV got shut off, he lost his total attention span. And it wasn't necessarily that he was even watching TV. He just needed
It's the
that like
sound. Yeah.
background noise, and he needed to know that like when he's building his Legos, he could take a break and actually look at the TV
Yep.
and see something that's important to him. So I do have a little bit different perspective on screen time than I did when I was,
Man.
first parenting.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's necessarily more acceptable. And we're really good at like regulating like what August watches. When he goes to bed,
Yeah.
he doesn't get to watch his tablet. He gets to listen to it, and it's bedtime stories. And so, um,
Gotcha.
but I do have a little bit different perspective than I used to have. I used to be like it was a hard no for me. Like there's just no reason for it. Go shoot your brother with a stick in the backyard.
Yeah. 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 I think it's kind of funny. Like what you just said. It's that having. So my son does kind of like a similar thing. So he'll put on like Blue or something. He'll put on a show. He'll start playing with his toys, and I guess maybe not. He'll he'll either just have a show on and he'll sit down and watch it, or he'll get really distracted by the show and kind of forget that he's playing with his toys. Um, I mean, there's days where the TV is literally turned off and he'll just play with his toys and he's super quiet, and it's really cool to see. I remember when I was a kid, we were playing with like the wrestling was like super huge, and I used to have like a wrestling ring and everything, and you could play there for hours, use your imagination and pretend these dudes are jumping off the ropes and breaking each other's ribs and shit. Later find out it was all fake. Um, to an
Wrestling's
extent.
not fake.
Yeah, yeah. Same with the other adult shows. Um, but yeah, man, like seeing their imaginations fire off is pretty cool. I have noticed, and one of the biggest issues that I personally have with screen time with them, and I've said this to my son before and to my daughter, and it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. They're inundated with these dopamine spikes. So they don't like this show, cool, they can change it. It's just they're able to constantly cycle through things instead of actually creating that dopamine. It's literally being spoon fed to them, which I think has the biggest issue. And that's what takes their attention spans away. And maybe that's not maybe. I have a feeling that's where the behavior kind of comes from. The moment that they have to do something a little bit more difficult, they go from saying, okay, well, I can't just push a button. I can't just switch the episode because I don't like what's happening. They have to actually go through it. And I think that is like a big detriment to like screen time and how it affects them. What do you think about that?
Well, it's kind of wild to think about. Like I guess I had never really thought about this, but when you were just talking about being able to like change something if they didn't like it, we didn't have that option when we were growing up. Like,
Nope.
and honestly, like you couldn't watch cartoons if it wasn't Saturday morning for the most part.
That's right.
So like you had to. I always got up early on Saturday morning so I could
Mm-hmm.
watch cartoons, and it's
6
funny.
a.m.
It's funny because I don't even like cartoons now.
Yeah.
But it was a big deal to me, and Cartoon Network, and there was a couple other things that like you started seeing cartoons a little bit more and more through like our us growing up, but like it just wasn't a thing where you could access it all the time.
No, it was
So
not.
it's interesting that you brought up the dopamine spike of like being able to just kind of change and watch stuff. Well, and that's the crazy thing about August is that he'll watch the same show and he'll watch the show over and over and over again
Yeah.
sometimes. And he's not necessarily ever just sitting there watching it. A lot of times he's playing. It just goes back to what I was saying. Like he needs it on in the background.
Yeah. That's
Jackson and
fair.
Jackson and Evelyn are a little bit different. They specifically like to scroll through like YouTube Shorts, and most of their stuff that they're looking at is super like appropriate.
So how do you feel about that? What do you think? Okay, so I'm going to tell you my rule that I have. All right. And then because it touches on what you just said, my daughter and my son, like the little ones, are not allowed on YouTube. Like you might earn like 10 minutes of YouTube, but even then, it's not a thing.
So so that's kind of our rule with August as well. And I think with Evelyn and Jackson, I mean Jackson's 13, so I just regulate things a little bit differently based off of how their maturity level is, right? Like
Yeah.
Jackson's a pretty mature 13-year-old. Um, I don't have any issues with him, so I let him do it. He's got this plethora of knowledge, and I think a lot of it is from YouTube. That like I'll say, be like, I can't remember whoever was in that, and he'll just like drop it on me, and I was like, dude, how the hell did you know that? And I mean, I don't want to say it's all YouTube, but like I think a lot of it is YouTube. Evelyn watches more like um I'm trying to think. There's a group of kids, and so like her stuff is a little bit different, and it's more definitely more feminine.
Sure.
Um, and she doesn't do a ton of YouTube. Like before she
Yeah.
goes to bed, she flips through some shorts. It's kind of how she like. I think it's just how she rests her mind, and then she will go to sleep. So, um, yeah, I do understand what you're saying. I'm kind of that way because I don't want the kids to find something that like because you can find some crazy shit on YouTube for sure, especially if you're looking for it. But I
Yeah.
have this. I think it's just a level of trust that I give my kids until they break it.
Right on. Um, all right. So you said Jackson, you feel like a lot of his knowledge comes from there. So, all right, now let's talk. So, screen time in kids and having it be educational content. Is it how how do you guys feel about it and how do you deal with it? And then I'll tell you how we feel and how, or at least how I deal with it.
It's really none of your business.
Well, this is I'm a communist, and I could just fucking meet you right now.
So you're asking about educational
hmm Like, do you
specifically?
think that there's specifically like
Oh, is there
educational, like
education?
not really? So you have screen time.
Yep.
Do you think that there's an issue with screen time if it is educational, or because if it's educational, the kid's technically learning, right? and it's not as bad. So do you think that, that what 7.5 hours or 8 hours is really bad if it's educational, or no?
I mean, it kind of goes back to the imagination thing. I think it might stifle people's imagination. I do think that Jackson's gets a lot of his almost useless knowledge. I don't want to say useless knowledge because I'm sure there's some
Sure.
use in there, but like he just knows a lot of shit, like he
Yeah.
does. And for a 13-year-old, it's kind of funny um, when he just like drops random facts in there. Well, let me preface this. I don't know if they're facts or not, but he said it with a lot of confidence, so I trusted him. Um, but yeah, I think that if I don't know, I think 8 hours, even if it's all educational, still seems like too much to me. To
Okay.
answer your question,
Yeah, that's fair. I think I think whether it's educational or not, I think there still should be some some limits to it where you kind of have to earn that time. Um, and the kind of funny thing is, so with my son, since I work remote, I'm I don't give him his tablet until either it's a afternoon normally, or after he has done some educational. So if I tell him all the time, like, if you want to be on PBS Kids and playing their games or learning, I don't have an issue with that, because to your point, he'll come up randomly and start telling me stuff about these different animals. And while I'm working, as he's watching them talking about and kind of exploring, to your point, like he's using kind of his imagination and wants to see what they look like. Um, he'll come up to me like, "Hey, Dad, show me a lion, show me a panther, show me XYZ bird." I'm like, "Dude, that's not even a real bird." And I searching. He's like, "Oh no shit, it's a fucking real bird." Um, but yeah, like I think they're, whether it's education or not, I think it's kind of our job as parents to set boundaries and limits to either A, what they can watch, and B, how much they're on these things, in order for them to kind of thrive as children. You want them to have that imagination aspect. You want them to go out and have their hobbies, or paint, play with their toys, whatever it might be. Like what do you what's do you think you can force your kids to have the hobbies to get away from screen time, or
I think you can. I mean, I'm not a big like. I don't know. I wouldn't want to force. Well, let's talk about sports, right? Like, I've never forced sports down any of my kids' throat. Like, I'm a huge sports fan. I love
yeah,
sports, and it's a huge part of my life, and it was a huge part of growing up. Like, from a lot of my friendships came from us all playing sports together, and then even into high school, it was that way. So, but I never wanted to force my kids to play sports because I didn't want them to. I didn't want it to be like my dream, right? Like, because I've seen parents take that stuff too far, and
yeah,
I and I understand it. Like, I've never watched the movie, but I've heard it's kind of crazy. The one with Will Smith about the Williams sisters, and I guess he was like
never watched it.
I think it's called something Richard. His
Is that
name's Richard.
pre-slap or post-slap?
It would probably be pre-slap.
Right on.
But anyways, he's kind of like this nut, and he forces his girls to be like amazing, and they are amazing, right? But was that his dream or was that their dream? And I think it's a very I don't know, it's interesting because I don't know if he's necessarily looked poorly from his children or from anybody else, but like how far do you want to push your kids? And I like to push my kids out of their comfort zone,
Yeah,
but I don't know as if I would feel comfortable to like make my dream their dream either. I want them to have their own dream.
right
So
on.
forcing hobbies, I think, is a little weird, and I've never had to do that with my kids. Like, that's the other thing I will say, especially with the younger three. Um, they'll play together, and they'll go downstairs and they'll just be creative and they'll do that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think when it gets to a time where like it looks like people are on the phone a little bit too much or on the TV a little bit too much, we'll take that away and then we'll force them, but not force them to do their own thing. But we, you don't have to go draw. You don't
Yeah.
have to go read. You can do whatever you want.
You just have to do anything you want without any technology.
Right.
Yeah, and so I'll just turn off internet and I'll just go randomly into, like, I'll tell my daughter, like, our laptop closed. I'll tell my son, tablet off. And, I will say they're pretty good at it. If I say turn it off, usually my daughter will give me the most. And she'll be like, why? And I'm like, because it's time. We've had enough of it. Between school and now we want to watch a show. If you want to watch a show, you could watch something on TV. You guys could watch something together, or we could turn everything off and you guys can figure something out to do. And the oldest one, he doesn't like it because he's just kind of like lost whenever I turn everything off for the first couple minutes. And then he kind of, it's kind of crazy. It's like he comes out of hibernation once the technology turns off, and like he's like, oh my God, family. Yeah, I'd love to be around you guys. This is amazing. But then the moment it's back on, it's like, all right, see ya. That was fun.
Deuces.
Yeah, exactly. I've had enough of that. Thanks for joining us on the Dad Compass podcast. Remember, every dad's journey matters, and we're all in this together. Don't forget to subscribe, share with other dads, and stay tuned for our next episode. Until then, keep navigating fatherhood with your true north.